Captain's Log Supplemental. If there's anything my career in Starfleet has taught me, it's to expect the unexpected. Over the last several days, we've had the opportunity to make first contact with the people of the Varquette system. They've only reached a handful of nearby stars so far, but their thirst to reach out reminds me of our own species' drive to explore. Not everything has been so familiar, though. During our first meeting with their Prime Ambassador, a sort of Secretary General in the parlance of home, we were presented with ceremonial blades, and despite our strong disagreement, challenged by the Prime's bodyguard to ritual combat. Mateo, our chief of security, stepped up and was, we thought at the time at least, able to subdue the warrior without any bloodshed. The blade, held by the extra set of arms kept hidden beneath the sash, as we would later learn was custom, came as a surprise to us all. In a panic, Mateo cut the right arm off. I thought we had lost all hope at a diplomatic future with the Varquettans right then and there, but a cheer rose up around the room. The bodyguard stood back up, and we watched as the severed arm regrew right before our eyes, like a gecko's tail at high speed. I don't think any of us looked as relieved as Mateo did. The Prime was horrified to learn that human limbs don't regrow in a similar fashion, and since then has apologized profusely. Another reminder to keep on your toes.
Everybody, welcome to Captain's Log Supplemental. My name is Matthew Ian Stanford. Joining me, as always, we have Robertson Johnson Beach.
Hello.
And our co-host Christopher, I don't know his middle name, Emmerich.
Michael, by the way, and howdy, folks.
That is the first time I've ever heard that. That's interesting. So on this podcast, we are taking a quick watch through, a quite lengthy watch through of all of the Star Trek shows and the movies. We are starting in chronological order from within the universe's timescale, which means that we are starting with Enterprise. This is episode 2. If you haven't heard episode 1 yet, it's definitely out on the feed because we wouldn't have posted this one yet. So make sure you check that one out. You don't have to listen to them in order because, it's Star Trek, what's going on. But for those of you who are new, which would be probably all of you because this is our second episode, the way we do things around here is I'm going to start with a little bit of a summary over the episode. This would be the second episode of Enterprise Season 1, although it is marked as episode 3 because of the pilot. I think from here on out we'll just call those by the proper numbers there. And there goes my train of thought. Fuck. Help me out here.
You're doing a summary?
Summary.
Episode 3?
3. That's right. Summary of episode 3. So.
Fight or flight.
Yes, fight or flight. That is the name. And, oh boy, this is a doozy. I've got all kinds of remarks, but I'm going to start with the summary at least as much as I can get through, which will be almost none of it. So, we have a cold open of a worm or a slug, as they call it, Sluggo, that Hoshi picked up off some planet, and Dr. Phlox is trying to figure out what it eats and trying to take care of it. That will be the B plot through the whole episode, is just kind of how Sluggo's doing.
Hint, not well.
He doesn't do great. But the, after the cold open, Hoshi's all upset that Sluggo's probably not gonna pull through. We get to the fantastic theme music. And then I'm not sure that Enterprise really ever hit its stride properly, but we have yet another kind of cold open, where Archer is looking for some kind of sound in the deck plates, a situation that does not get resolved. Like, it doesn't come up again through the whole episode.
Not at all. Yeah, he just
you're right.
keeps on clanking.
Yep, he hears
I didn't
some
even
clanking.
think about that.
So if you're hoping to figure out what that is, maybe it'll come up in a later episode. I don't remember. We'll have to see if it comes back, because that'd be fucking amazing. I would take back everything bad I said about this show if that came back later. But Hoshi shows up and like asks him to switch quarters because her stars are going on the wrong way on her side of the ship, which like, okay, I get. But I have a question. Is there not an executive officer in Starfleet? Because that is not the fucking captain's job. That is the XO's job. And it just occurred to me, I don't think any of the shows have had an XO. The closest you get is like number one from like, Next Generation, Jonathan Frakes. But it's more like a pirate's first mate than like an actual XO.
Yeah. There's certainly not that role, at least not spelled out. I'm wondering, that seems like something that Lower Decks would explore. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like Lower Decks takes a look at the Lower Decks and the Starfleet officers there, but it's probably just one of those mundane details that was never worth exploring.
It bugs me because I come from a military family, and I was actually an XO of a cadet squadron when I was a teenager. So like, I know what an XO does, and it didn't occur to me till just now that there just doesn't seem to be one on a Starfleet vessel, or even like, I guess they're not really Starfleet yet, but that's weird. Like, the captain shouldn't be doing goddamn everything. That's not his job. He's got more important things to do. And it comes up again later when I'm like, this is a job the XO should be doing. Why is the captain doing it? So I don't know. It's just, it bugged the hell out of me in this one.
See, we don't have ship's counselor yet, so.
So anyways, they, typical humans complaining about how empty space is and they want to explore some fun shit.
Where are all them aliens at?
Mostly to bang them based on how horny the show has been so far.
Yes.
And T'Pol says, well, I mean, space is pretty empty. What do you want from me? But they...
Real quick.
Sure.
Quick interjection. So, I was re-reviewing this part, and it reminded me of a kind of a sci-fi article I read the other day that, first off, was pretty out there. It was not peer-reviewed and had no real basis in space from what I was reading. But I thought it brought up an interesting thought, which was how many aliens in the galaxy would be hostile. So the way this article took a look at it was they based it off of a count of basically countries in on Earth that had invaded another country between, I think, like 1915 and 1922 or something like that. I don't know why they chose that date range, but needless to say, they based it off of kind of a human experience because that's where our data points are, I suppose. And they came up with there's at least 4 evil alien species out there that would, invade our planet if they could. And I thought, 4 is not bad, right?
We got the Klingons, that's one.
Uh-huh.
The Nausicaans.
Sure, yeah.
Romulans.
It's...
Dominion.
Putting it in Star Trek terms, like I was counting, that's the first thing that popped into my head was, how many real hostile alien species are there in Star Trek?
The Gorn.
The Gorn, yeah. I wonder about that data because this article tickles my political science background.
I knew it would.
Because they are suggesting that, there's some limited number of countries that are invading other countries since 1914 or whatever the article says. Which,
right.
Okay, I understand that. So they're kind of basing there's 200 countries in the world or whatever. 123rd.
I think at the time it was 153. So
sure.
Their count was 51 of 153 or something like that.
51 of 153 invaded. What their data probably doesn't account for based on that description is that those are the 51 countries that are able to invade other countries, because yes. I'm assuming the most the most powerful nations on the planet are all in that list. Because
take a guess who number 1 was.
Oh, it was us. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my point with that is, by definition, an alien race is already able to travel between stars and whatnot, is already that strong. So I'm pretty sure that by their reasoning, which I don't think is necessarily incorrect, it's a fine way to think about it, but by their reasoning, it would be close to 100% of aliens are hostile.
Sure.
Including us.
Yeah.
So, can I ask you something, Chris?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever read or heard of the three-body problem or the concept of the dark forest?
These are both things that I've heard of, but never really delved into at all.
Okay. So, the three-body problem kind of dives into this ad nauseum, but the concept of the dark forest is that essentially the solution to the, what's the paradox?
Fermi.
The Fermi paradox is the reason we haven't heard from any neighboring alien species yet is because it is a system-wide understood fact that if you advertise your location, someone will either come and kill or conquer you. So it is in everyone's best interest to just not make a noise.
Interesting.
We call that a Nash equilibrium in game theory.
Meanwhile, we're shooting out Voyager into deep space with all of our
Ooh,
deets.
Deep space is kind of in quotes there.
Well, sure. I mean, eventually it'll be deep space.
See, I prefer the concept that any species that has made it to the point where it's capable of interstellar travel has clearly overcome most of its own internal conflict and therefore is less likely to annihilate you, but we only have a solution set of one right now, so
sure,
we can only say so much.
And we don't even have a solution set of one because we don't know what we're going to be like when we are interstellar,
Yeah, are we
True.
Are we Prime Universe or are we Mirror Universe Starfleet?
Stay tuned for season 2.
Anyway, sorry.
Anyways,
continue.
no, that was great. So they, just to kind of shorten things up, they find a ship that seems to be relatively derelict. They're trying to figure out, because they're trying to meet people. So they're trying to figure out what's going on with this ship. And T'Pol is very much like, leave it the fuck alone. It doesn't involve you, which I can't necessarily say she's wrong about, but we'll talk about more about that particular aspect of this in the second section of the show today. So save your thoughts on that. But one of the things that she did say, which I found very interesting, was that and this is something that never happens in Star Trek again, scanning their ship's interior might be considered an invasion of privacy. Yeah, it sure fucking would. And all he want to do is check for life signs. How many goddamn times do the Star Trek shows?
Later in the episode, the Enterprise gets scanned like that.
Yes, and I think that was kind of part of that purpose. And so how many times did Picard just show up and any life signs? Well, there's 14 humanoid life signs on board or whatever. Yeah, I guess this is the only time they ever gave a shit about it.
Sure. Well, I mean, they got that giving a shit right out of the way, right at the start of Starfleet, after they decided they just needed to know some stuff, Amazon style.
Hell yes.
See, this is Enterprise asking the big questions. First episode was all teleporters, and now we're doing scanning technology.
Sure.
And during this little moment, another thing I got called out in my notes here, they're on the bridge, and it's hey, there's a fucking ship here. That's weird. Why is Trip there? Shouldn't he be down engineering something?
This is an interesting thought. He kind of doubles. You mentioned number one earlier. I think in Enterprise, Trip kind of doubles as the number one as well as chief engineer.
I agree that he fulfills the same writer's role, which is to give the captain a best friend, but I don't agree that he fulfills that role in an organizational way in universe. Because he's not, he's more like a counselor. He talks to everybody, he's friendly, he's got a nice southern accent, but he's not doing anything other than engineering. He's not making any decisions. He's not ensuring that the captain's plans get executed.
Yeah, he doesn't have the authority.
I think Archer, though, treats him that way. He gives him tasks a lot of times that are similar to that, in my opinion. And you're right, he's not, he's not treated as a rank officer, but he seems to use him in that role a lot.
Right. So they come to the decision to ignore T'Pol's objections and board this alien ship. Trip is a little butthurt because he would like to go board the alien ship. And Captain Archer's why would I need an engineer? And that might be one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. Why the fuck wouldn't you need an engineer on what you admit is a broken ship? But whatever.
His reasoning was, oh no, the Enterprise is too new. It needs its daddy.
which is fine, but like they didn't take an engineer at all. Like send one of the lower engineering staff. That's what they're for. Technically, Archer shouldn't have been on that fucking away mission. And this is that Kirkian mindset where like the captain goes on all the away missions that I find very obnoxious. And not because I don't think a captain should go get to have fun or whatever. That's not what bothers me. What bothers me is that a person who becomes captain has a very select set of like managerial and tactical skills. So there is, by definition, someone on that ship that is better at away missioning than the captain. Because that's not the captain's job. He has too many other important things to be doing. Like, send the guy who's good with phasers or good at double hand punching. Like, don't send the fucking captain.
Double hand punching.
So of course the ship looks like it's been kind of shot up on the inside, a little bit on the outside. Reed wants to blow it the fuck up. Captain says, no, how about I try this one button? We'll just try one thing at least, and that works. So Reed was sad.
Yep.
They go inside, they find some bodies. Hoshi screams for a long time.
Freaks the fuck out.
She is not happy, which to be fair, okay, like she's not comfortable in that situation. I found her objection to bringing a blaster, what the fuck? It was Star Wars bullshit. Bringing a pistol with her kind of weird. Like, she is an ensign. She's still in the military. So I don't know why she's like, is a sidearm really necessary? Like, yes.
Yeah, like they have to go through some sort of firearms training as part of, Starfleet.
Right. She even says she's rated for, whatever pistols.
Right. When my dad came back from Afghanistan, he was the only person on the plane, and he still had to carry a sidearm. Like, that's just how the military works. You carry a sidearm when you're going somewhere.
Never know when you're going to have to pew-pew.
Exactly. So they find this. T'Pol says, hey, let's go. We need to get out of here. This isn't our business. Archer agrees. Then he feels bad about it. So they leave, and then they turn around because they had an awkward dinner.
Yeah. Archer was very haughty about the whole thing.
He was too. He was a little on it. He was, I don't know what kind of soapbox they made his dinner chair out of, but that seems to be where he gets his grandstanding.
That's true.
They turn around, they go try to find, what exactly these aliens were doing there. So they take Dr. Phlox with them. Fucking genius. Bring the goddamn medical person when you find bodies. Should have done that in the first place.
Yeah, however, still working out this whole away team, assembly thing.
That's fine, but this is not a new concept. Like, there are military teams and things that do this kind of shit right now. Like, you bring a doctor, you bring a medic. That's what you do when you potentially find bodies. Anyways, so Phlox says, hey, it looks like they were harvesting some kind of relatively obscure or rare like biological chemical that these bodies were making. Triglobulin, I believe is the word he said.
Triglobulin, yes.
Which is not unlike human lymphatic systems. Which brings me to my kind of overall point of these aliens have the technology to travel faster than light and clearly very advanced spacecraft and weaponry and bioengineering scans and shit. Can they not, like, manufacture this stuff somehow? Like, even kind of the way we make insulin, where we kind of semi-grow it in, like, or at least in the early days, we were growing it in, like, pig pancreases and shit. We use
bacteria now.
Now we use bacteria, exactly. Like, these aliens couldn't make this triglobulin shit in an easier way.
So they focused all their research on cool, pointy ships, okay?
I mean, it could also be that, like, to them, other species are essentially bacteria. This might be that answer.
Yeah,
then why didn't they just bring them with them and keep them alive to keep producing this stuff?
Well, when we harvest the sap from maple trees, do we bring the tree with us?
No, but they
throw a
killed
bucket on it.
They killed them. We don't kill the maple tree.
Yeah, tomato.
They also demonstrate their tractor beam capabilities later on in the episode. They totally could have towed that ship.
Well, and maybe they can't tow it at warp, which is fine, but like that ship was huge. Just bring the bodies with you. Anyways, Hoshi is translating their language. Apparently the universal translator works by shouting a single word at it every once in a while. So like, I mean, hey, it worked. So who am I to say? I mean, to be fair, she is doing things, but like, it just looked like she's just going ship. And the thing's like, nope, sorry, try again.
Why is the universal translator in this show so bad? Is it like a new technology? Did I miss that?
That's kind of touched on a little bit in the first episode, I think, where it's okay. Not, it's kind of her experiment, basically, as I understand it. So yeah, it's pretty bad at first.
Yeah, I gather that she is in some way, shape, or form on the team that kind of developed this concept of universal translation as like a science, and so she's kind of the point person on dealing with it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there's some sort of weird alien device on the ship that's harvesting these guys' goo. Got it. Apparently power signatures are like a fingerprint for alien technology, which I find kind of an interesting concept, that like I can scan a toaster and then if I later scan a spaceship, like I'll know the toaster and the spaceship came from the same species.
This isn't actually a new concept in Star Trek either. They've definitely used that in previous Star Trek episodes.
Oh, for sure. But usually, like, if I recall correctly, there's a level of like, I saw those ships warp away and they got some kind of energy signature from those ships. Usually. Therefore, I can identify other ships. Not like I can identify their ships at a distance, moving faster than light, because I scanned their random medical pump. Like, that seems like a big gap, you know?
Maybe.
Anyways, the alien, the bad guys show up. The slowest shuttle arm withdrawal that has ever existed happens.
Oh my god. My big note for that scene was they really need to find a better way to dock that shuttle. Like, what is happening?
I appreciate that, like, we don't have room for a big old shuttle bay. Like, I get it. It's a new ship and stuff. But, like, you can't make the arm a little faster?
Yeah. They really got to work on that whole shuttle docking thing. It's real bad.
Dude, I'm pretty sure that the Canada arm that, like, the space shuttle used in the 90s was faster than that thing.
Yes, 100%. We fire a torpedo. It sounds just like all Star Trek torpedoes. It does diddly dick to these things. Their shields are too good for our scanners to penetrate, although we can also tell when they're charging weapons, so I don't know what anything means anymore. An alien that belongs to the people who were killed shows up, and Hoshi has to translate to tell them that, like, hey, you should attack those guys and not us. Which, all right, that whole scene was fine. Like, it's dramatic. It's sufficiently dramatic, and whatever.
Hoshi was far too dramatic in this scene for me, to be honest. Like,
yeah, you think so? Well, dude, she was not being more dramatic. Yeah. She's been dramatic
the whole
since
episode.
Day one. Yeah,
no, that's fair. Yeah, I had notes throughout the whole episode about how annoying it was.
I totally get imposter syndrome. I understand that. I think what they were trying to do, but I feel like they directed her to go way too hard on this.
Mm-hmm. A little too over the top.
Yeah, it's certainly it's okay to have imposter syndrome, and I think that's a fantastic thing to portray, especially in something like this,
Certainly.
where we're like a brand new starship, and literally like entire things hinge on every action you take that you can't even conceive of. Like, that's a great place to have imposter syndrome. I understand that. But imposter syndrome doesn't mean you're going to flail about and scream at every moment. Like, that's just
She ran away on the ship when they first found the body. Like, Archer's like, hey, where are you going? And she's gone. She just literally ran away.
She's like, you don't need a translator for dead people, which, to be fair, that's accurate.
Yeah. So
I feel like they did a much better job with Uhura in Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, and they explored a very similar concept. Yeah, yes. I agree.
Yes, she did it. She did a much better job. But this is, late 90s, early 2000s Trek, so we get what we get.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Hoshi eventually convinces the dude to help, they're androgynous, convinces the person to help because they do not have gender, which they did specifically say, which was kind of a nice little early 2000s shout out. And then at the end, it's like, oh, okay, well, so the whole B plot was Sluggo, right? And I wanted to wrap this up at the end. The whole B plot with Sluggo was supposed to be like a representation of Hoshi, right? So it's like, well, maybe Sluggo's not comfortable here because it's just not where Sluggo belongs. And they had this whole conversation in the middle of the show where maybe Hoshi just needs to go back to teaching because maybe Sluggo just needs to go back to its planet. Okay, great. Then at the end, they just put Sluggo on some other fucking planet?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the
Have
definition.
fun dying alone, Slug.
Not even that. That's not even it. They don't know anything about this species' reproductive capabilities. Phlox specifically said that at the beginning of the episode. This is how invasive species happen.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
they're going to come back to this planet in 20 years, and Sluggos are just going to own the whole planet, and they would have wiped out everything else.
Yeah, like for all they know, the reason why Sluggo was struggling so much is because it had just like laid a ton of eggs inside of its shell or something.
Yeah. And it just seems silly to me that y'all are like the best of the best humanity has to offer. Yet the border between Florida and Georgia has a stronger like non-invasive species like ordinance. And that's the cap of the episode. So, classic Trek. Okay, so we're going to take a little break and we will be right back. And we are back. So in the, kind of the talky, which we need a fucking name for these segments. Chris has come up with a name for the third segment, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But we need a name for the second segment where we just talk about random shit that's kind of vaguely associated to the episode. But today's topic du jour is what we do when we stumble upon random derelict spacecraft. Because there's actually kind of an interesting concept here. We on Earth in the 2022 have what is known as salvage rights as an international doctrine. If you come up across a boat in international water that's just kind of adrift, there is a set of legal codes that allows you to basically like take that boat. Now there are like rules and guidelines and there's ways that is done, but that is a real thing that happens even today. So it seems obvious that, like, if we are going into space in order to meet other people, we know other people are out there, we would expect to come across derelict equipment sometimes, okay? So there has got to be, it just struck me as interesting that when they show up at this ship, T'Pol has obviously some kind of policy on this given to her by Vulcan High Command. But the humans all seem like, well, I don't know what to do. What should we do with it? And that seems staggering to me. You
would think there would at least be something from, like, solar system exploration times.
Sure. And like, and what's the black kid's name?
Oh God.
Shit. What is his name?
Is it Travis?
Travis.
No.
Travis. Yeah, Travis.
Yes, Travis.
I forget his last name.
Montgomery.
What was it?
Montgomery is the actor's last name. I'm sorry.
So Travis grew up on a freight hauler, like a warp capable freight hauler, which means that like, despite what Enterprise kind of imply, well, I don't know if they imply, but like the milieu of Enterprise is like, we're the first humans out here. And they are, but there are plenty of other humans that are doing stuff in and around Sol and it's like various stars that are close by. So like coming across derelict shit has got to be a common occurrence because anywhere you have things running, you're going to have things that break down.
Right,
so
but this is derelict alien shit.
Sure, but they knew they were looking for aliens. So my question kind of that for us to kind of talk about is, what do you all think is the proper ethics of this situation? Because we do get presented with two different sides of it. And I'm curious where everyone falls. I'm going to hold my own opinion back.
Well, that depends. Are you a consequentialist? Oh my god, I can't talk.
Consequentialist?
Consequentialist. There you go.
So for our listeners, because we're going to pretend I know what that means, what's a consequentialist?
It's the concept that like the meaning, the true meaning behind your decisions ethically is derived from whether or not they result in a good or bad situation.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about there's a word for that. There's a I think it was Rousseau or Descartes came up with this, the moral imperative. So like it doesn't matter who's doing what, morality is absolute.
No, this is the opposite of that.
Yeah, as I said, that's the other option.
So the consequence, no. So I guess moral imperative
is that it doesn't matter that your actions were necessarily morally good or bad. Because the result was good, your actions were good.
I see. The moral imperative says it doesn't matter what your motivations are, an action is either good or bad. So I don't know that those are necessarily conflicting, but they are definitely different stages.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can have good and bad motivations to do something. Like if you come across a derelict wreck and like your entire power generation system is like running on duct tape and thread at this point, like if your decision winds up saving the life of your crew, even though you potentially stole from, another company, from some foreign species, like, is it really bad or is it good?
And your answer is?
Yeah, that's what we're waiting on your actual answer.
I would say that it is good in that situation because you're preserving life.
Yeah, I think, like anything, there's a lot of gray area here, and it's very situational. In the case of this episode, I think they try to explore kind of both ends of the spectrum. They initially say, oh, there's some dead people here. We should leave because we might also be dead if the people who did this find us. That is the good decision. And then Captain Archer gets all haughty and says, no, that's not morally right. We should have, buried them or tried to find their mama. And they go back and get caught by the aliens and luckily get bailed out by the other guy. I don't want to give a cop-out answer, but I think it is situational. In this instance, if I was making the decision, I probably would have gotten out of there, especially being the first foray into space as a representative of the human race. Probably not great to die right off the bat.
The thing that boggled my mind about this decision was that Archer wanted to go back and, I guess, perform some human, final space burial.
Yes, and this is a theme for Archer and most of the humans on the Enterprise too, is enforcing their own cultural views and practices on other aliens.
Did he want to do a burial though? It sounded like his idea was to figure out where they came from so that he could get the bodies home.
But maybe that alien race doesn't care though. Maybe once they're dead, they're might as well not exist. Maybe there is no burial rights for them.
Maybe they were the last of their kind.
Well, which is actually that concept does exist in Star Trek because the Klingons are like that. They don't care about the meat after the soul leaves.
So personally, I agree with you, Chris. I think that it was foolhardy to go back and force this kind of human, I don't know, these human rights on an unknown species where you don't really know what they would have wanted. And on top of that, he's endangering his own crew by taking them back, knowing that they have similar biology and knowing that there is an aggressive force that's harvesting these people.
To be fair, the similar biology thing didn't come back until they already went back. Because they never had Phlox. It was
when the doctor was on board.
Which is, again, why the fuck didn't you bring Phlox on as soon as you found a dead body?
That's right. I forgot they didn't have that second away team until they had already gone back.
So to play devil's advocate, that's the wrong term. To moderate the discussion a little bit, let me ask you both this then. if the outcome, so because it sounds like you're both on the fairly like, maybe it was foolhardy and maybe there was a better way to approach it, but in the end, it was a morally sound choice because it worked out. But what if all of the information was exactly the same, except that in the end, it turns out that they had violated some kind of, like very honorable death ritual or whatever, and they had really offended the species. Like, and it was like clearly a bad thing for them to have done. Does that change the morality of that decision in the beginning?
I think you've got it backwards for us. I think we both viewed it as a bad decision, regardless of whether or not it worked out.
I see. I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
That's not going to change it.
Okay, so you both think, well, man, because that's what I was going to say, and now I don't have anything to say.
So, like, okay, what would it change anybody's mind if Archer was actually able to find the homeworld of these people and return their bodies? I mean, I know that this, like, the Deus Ex guy shows up at the end to bail them out, but would it change either of your opinions if that is what triggered like first contact protocol with an Enterprise away mission for the first time?
I think that is what basically they spell out at the end, right? They portray it as they have opened up relations with the Axanar, and they're just starting to talk, but things are good, and they kind of portray it as, oh, it's that way because they went back.
But I don't like it. The problem I have is like, my opinion is that T'Pol was the person who was most correct in all of this, because she was clearly like following a prescribed procedure that no one else was following. And there's a level of like
flying by the seat of their pants for this crew.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I understand the kind of plucky TV nature of that, but like, this is why these kinds of things need to have rules, so that it is not just some random person's decision on whether or not to do this. Because
right.
At least Picard can talk about it right before he ignores it.
Right. Sure. I mean, that's fair. Yeah, because, objections are duly noted and all that shit, to hell with our orders, yada, yada, yada. But at least that, like, there's an acknowledgement that those practices exist. How many times is the Prime Directive ignored as soon as it is brought up? Most of the time.
Yeah, it's only there to be ignored.
Right. That's the entire function of the Prime Directive. But I think that it is interesting to me that like we're supposed to feel that Archer is the hero here. And I'm calling Archer because he's the one who moved the story. It's not necessarily specifically his fault. It's just the kind of humanity characters that we're supposed to feel like they're the heroes here because they did this. And yet, like, we don't even know what they managed to accomplish. For all we know, they just sparked a war and those Axanar are fucking dead next week. Like, we don't know.
So that is what has bothered me about Archer through the first 3 episodes so far. I have a hard time rooting for him because he's a pretty big jerk to T'Pol, like all of the time forever.
It does soften later. Just
that is good to know. The show opens up with this kid like talking to his dad, just being racist or speciesist.
Softens and hardens.
And I don't know. I'm just finding it very hard to root for him right now. Like I find Trip much better as a person for some reason. Sure. Even though he shares the same beliefs. I don't know why. It just comes off softer somehow. Maybe it's the Southern accent. I don't know.
I wonder how much of that, kind of opinion of Archer comes from an environment that we live in where, like, Archer is kind of representing all of the things that are, like, classically American, and yet we're, 3 relatively liberal people who have been having a lot of trouble with what is classically American over the last 2 decades. So I'm wondering if some of that is rubbing off on you there.
Every time.
Also, I was to say, I think another factor is here that most of the time it is Archer who is making the decisions, who is initiating the action. So at least probably even subconsciously, he's also being blamed for all the things that happen, even if Trip is expressing the same views.
Sure.
He strikes me as like purposely antagonistic for no real end. Like, he reminds me of who's the captain on Discovery? Lorca. He reminds me of Lorca in the first couple episodes when you first meet him. He just seems like a jerk.
Yeah, it turned out Lorca was a jerk, so that worked out.
Right.
I think that I'm curious how your opinion of Archer will evolve as we keep doing this, because Archer's character does change a bit as the show goes on.
But also, a lot of the things don't change.
Oh, sure.
Like, I like Trip, I like T'Pol, I like Travis, I like the doctor whose name I can't recall right now. Like,
Phlox.
Phlox is my favorite character on this show.
He's really great. Like, there's so many likable characters on this show.
Also, he wants to watch humans have sex.
Oh yeah. Wait, I had a note about that. Hold on. I have a whole note. Phlox. Do you think they'll let me watch? Do they not have porn? Does their species not have porn? Or like,
why would
more
they need
specifically,
porn? They have multiple partners.
Do the humans not have porn, like, on the ship? Because I find that very hard to believe.
Yeah,
that is a legitimate question.
Speaking of things that Lower Decks addresses that is clearly happening but is never mentioned in other Star Treks.
Cleaning out the biofilters on the holodeck. Is next episode, at some point, Trip gets knocked up in a holodeck, so I think it's in the next couple episodes.
Oh, that's not I thought that was like at least season 2. Am I making that up?
Wait, they have holodecks in the show?
Early.
No,
not yet.
really.
Well, the humans don't.
I was gonna say, I thought the holodeck became a thing in Next Generation. Like, the whole point was they were going away for so long, they needed like some special form of entertainment.
Yeah, so it's an alien species. We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get there. We're running out of time for this segment, so I am going to go ahead and say we got to take a break, and then we will be back with whatever the fuck Chris has got for us for section 3.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. So they've decided to call this next segment The Trek. I know, very original. We are going to explore strange new topics, seek out new thoughts and new talking points. Basically bold to go wherever the fuck we want. In this case, I wanted to highlight...
dork.
We're all dorks here.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Accurate.
In this segment, I wanted to highlight some other good sci-fi that I've been enjoying recently. In this case, it's The Orville. So some of you may be familiar with it, some may not. It is created by Seth MacFarlane, which seems very strange, but apparently he's a very big Trek fan, and he was inspired to create this show because he hadn't seen any good Trek recently. The first couple seasons were so-so for me. It's taken a couple-year hiatus, basically, and has come back, and the new kind of reimagining of it is The Orville New Horizons. It's just a continuation of the story, though. I thought it's been some particularly interesting sci-fi that has explored a number of topics that, I mean, even really Star Trek hasn't delved as deep into. There is a large story arc in the show that highlights trans rights, which I thought was very interesting. You know, an all-male species has a child who is born female, which is apparently a very rare occurrence, but when it happens, they perform surgery on the child to make them male without any, of course, discussion or anything. Yeah. So this story arc started in a previous season, but kind of came to a head in this most recent one, where the child who was forced into the surgery when they were an infant starts asking questions and is depressed and eventually finds out that they were born female. And so it explores kind of a lot of very complicated issues that are very relevant in today's society. And it explores them in a very interesting and engaging way that I thought was fantastic. But that's not all. I mean, it goes into dehumanization of war enemies, racial bigotry, xenophobia. Mixed race couples, moral implications of weapons of mass destructions, disinformation campaigns around cults of personality and political instability. I think this most recent season has been quite honestly fantastic and very interesting, and very brave in the topics it's explored. To be quite honest, because even Star Trek is hesitant sometimes to go as deep into these topics as the Orville has. Now, I will say occasionally it is a little silly. It is Seth MacFarlane. I mean, the creator of Family Guy and Ted, so there is some of that humor in there. And in certain situations can come up as ham-handed, I think, in the topics they explore. A little too direct, a little too on the nose. But overall, just a fantastic thing that I've been very much enjoying. Have either of you watched the show at all?
I have not.
I watched the first season when it came out, and I don't know, based on what you're describing, it was not the same show basically at that point. So I can't comment on that. However, I will. You say Star Trek doesn't explore some of these topics as deeply, and I think that is definitely a symptom of the episodic nature of Star Trek, especially up until these last few shows where they've done kind of the longer arcs. But I wonder, and obviously you've seen the show, so you can answer this. You say they explore the topics more deeply. Do they still stick to an episodic kind of like a weekly reset, or do they take more than one episode to explore these arcs?
It's definitely more than one episode. Yeah. I mean, some particularly more than others, like the like I said, the trans issue was several episodes over a number of different seasons. Some they just touch on the topic so in maybe one episode, but a number of them that, like I said, they do definitely explore over a number of episodes, and it is, I would say it's semi-episodic. Like there's definitely a main kind of story that it follows, especially after the first season, I would say. But there's still kind of some episodic qualities to it.
Okay. Because it sounds like, science fiction as a genre is defined by its ability to, defined by the fact that it does shine a mirror on the human condition, right? Like science fiction is an analytical genre. That's what it's always been. That's what it always is. That's why things like, you hear a lot of discussion, and I'm a big proponent of it, of like, Star Wars, for example, is not actually science fiction, it's fantasy. Not because there aren't lasers and spaceships and shit, that's fine, but because as a genre, it needs to be more reflective and self-inspecting of the human condition in a way that Star Wars simply isn't.
It's a good story set in a sci-fi universe.
Right. And that's where like science fiction as setting and science fiction as genre can kind of diverge. Star Trek also falls into that trap, so to speak, sometimes, where especially individual episodes was like, well, we didn't really explore any kind of interesting humanity here. It's just like, Geordi had to flip the polarity on something.
I think Star Trek movies in particular fall into that. Most of them.
Wow, what a statement. Hold on, let me think about that.
Where
you go ahead, Rob.
Where would you, I guess, how would you place the episodes of TNG with Q?
Q is an interesting. Okay, first of all, let me preface this by saying I don't like Q as a character concept. I find him a little too Deus Ex-y, but that's fine. Q is an interesting element vis-a-vis this discussion because Q is explicitly trying to get Jean-Luc and the other humans to reflect on what makes them human. So, yes, it is quote-unquote magic, space magic or whatever you want to deal with. But I don't think that, whether it's ham-handed or not, I think that Q is at least an attempt at those kinds of science fiction elements.
Okay.
Oh, that was the right answer. Sweet.
I mean, I guess I just don't know where I personally fall on that spectrum there, because like you said, it is very space magic-y, but at the same time, they really are delving into those like
Sure.
elements of humanity in.
Yeah,
There's not like an interaction with technology that I would expect from science fiction. That would be my only hesitation there.
Sure, and science fiction, is reliant on that, because we can explore humanity using, fucking modern day fiction. Charles Dickens and Ernest Hemingway were clearly putting lenses on the human condition, and they are not writing science fiction. So that is a fair point. But to get back to your question about the movies, Chris, I think I might disagree with you entirely, because movies,
you're wrong, but please provide your point.
Okay, so hold on. What movies we have? We have movie 1, which is Viger, right? So that's just classic Star Trek. So whether or not it's science fiction, whatever. It's just a long episode. Mm-hmm. You have Khan. Now, Khan is an interesting concept because I just said because it uses the technology and the science fiction in a way to discuss like what happens when humanity tries to play God. It's almost like a Frankenstein-esque story, not only with Khan, but also with the Genesis device, right? So those are two plots that are running kind of parallel in that, like, we are getting too close to touching the face of God here, and we need to dial back our hubris. So I think that's a fantastic science fiction story.
So interestingly, I think. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, I was trying to figure out what you meant by that. I forgot. Khan is genetically altered, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so I was going to say, I think honestly the original series movies outside of the first one, most adhere to the science fiction genre, whereas the next generation movies and on, I think, fall into the.
Okay, so hold on. Let's see. We got. Do you include Generations in the old one or the new ones?
I'd say that's more the new ones.
Okay, so Generations, you have an analysis of what it means to fear death and how that drive can absolutely destroy your humanity and your empathy towards other people. Okay, that's the main theme of that movie.
I mean, I get it, but also, I don't think it did a good job of portraying that.
What? I don't know how I could do it better. He blew up a sun, Chris. Yes, and whether or not the movies did a good job with its theming is neither here nor there. There's bad science fiction, but I don't think you can argue. Well, I mean, you can. You are doing it. I don't think it is accurate to say that the movies are less science fiction than the show, because after that you've got First Contact, which is it's basically Moby Dick again.
It's just a story to me,
but like, with robots. But like Moby Dick with robots is science fiction, right? Because you're talking about the human condition, but with robots. Like that's the definition of science fiction.
Yeah,
that's the one that's got like the fight scene with Worf on top of the like hull, right? In the spacesuit.
Yeah, the Borg, and they go back in time. Yeah.
I have seen that movie so many times. I could probably give you scene by scene.
I remember seeing it in theaters with my dad. I don't think I've ever seen it since.
So then you've got, what's after that? Insurrection. Insurrection. This is where y'all are going to forget what all these movies are, but I remember every fucking beat because that's how my brain works.
Also, you just watched them like a year ago, didn't you?
It was a little longer than that, but yeah. It was towards the beginning of the pandemic. Insurrection is about an alien race living inside this, like, on this planet that gives basically immortality in kind of a weird way. It's like a fountain of youth planet. And the inhabitants have decided that they are happy living kind of an idyll lifestyle. So they don't like do technology anymore, even though they know it. And then some people that like were a sect of them who are trying to prolong their life via like gross surgeries and genetic alterations want to take the planet from them. And their argument is that those people are not using it to its fullest potential. So it is very much kind of an analysis of like colonialism and like resource harvesting.
That's a stretch to me.
Oh shit. We're gonna have to get to these movies. What's after Resurrection? Nemesis? Yeah,
Sure.
no, that one's crap. I don't know.
Which is the one where Data like gets a cat and he's got that emotion chip in him?
That's Generations.
Yeah.
That was Generations. Okay. I liked that plot point.
Spot.
Yeah,
I mean,
he had Spot in the series though.
Speaking of science fiction with cats, have either of you seen Lightyear yet?
Yes.
Oh my god!
Meow, 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 meow,
Oh my god, it was incredible! I fucking loved it.
Yeah, I watched it with the kids the other day. That was good.
So yeah, Orville might be added to my list. I don't get Hulu, so like,
it's actually going to Disney Plus.
Oh well, shit. I guess I'll watch
Weird.
it there then. I guess it's Fox, right? Because it's Seth MacFarlane.
Well, not if it's going to Disney Plus. I don't think they own Fox. I think that's
You goddamn right they do.
they do. Oh Jesus, they own everything.
Yeah, they own everything, man. Disney Daddy. They got Simpsons is on Disney Plus.
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
All right. Anything else, Chris?
Nope, that covers it.
I think that'll wrap us. Thanks for joining us. Next week we will be doing episode 4 of the first season of Enterprise. And I believe Rob, you're taking the helm on that one.
Yup.
So that'll be exciting for us all. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we're gonna at some point plug websites and socials and shit. We don't have any of those things yet, so I will annoy you with them next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Captain's Log Supplemental. You can follow us on Twitter at PodCLS or send us hate mail at podcls3@gmail.com.